Welcome to another episode of the Truish Hoops podcast, joined once again by James Boisits. We're going to be talking about the Western Conference Finals and Eastern Conference Finals, both game one reactions, and our previews for the rest of the series.
All right, cool. So let's get. Why don't we start off with the game last night? Because you obviously have an emotional connection. We're
Right.
taping this at around 4 o'clock on Wednesday, so we, this may come out after the results of the Thunder Spurs game. But as far as the Knicks Cavs go, I don't know about you, but we had texted about this. I was expecting. I understand the Knicks had a bit of a layoff here. I
Mhm.
expected them to win this game roughly about by 10. I had them winning this series. People call me a huge Nick hater, but I have picked them in
Who
every
says that?
but I have picked them in every series in the playoffs so far, which is something at the beginning of the playoffs I didn't think I was going to do, to be quite honest with you. So I picked Knicks Hawks. I picked them over the Sixers, and I picked them over Cleveland. And it looked like Cleveland was really shutting me up and a lot of people up, including that Nick crowd last night. And all of a sudden, Kenny Atkinson arrived, and that's why this we are here. And Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges, gotta give him credit. I thought Mikal Bridges played his best game as a Nick personally. I think if you look at the scoring numbers, you're not gonna think that. But just the way he played yesterday and how so integral he was to that victory. The Knicks, I believe, if I'm correct, have not won a series in the history of their franchise after losing game one at home. And so that
That might be true.
is
I think
that
that's true.
is a big deal that they won this game yesterday. It's not even just how they won and it was incredible. It's a huge deal for just the significance of their history as a franchise of how series goes. And now I think they're going to win in 5 games personally, but you give me your reaction.
Yeah, that was ended up being an incredible fourth quarter. I actually turned the game off for like 10 minutes because I was like,
I
I
don't
think
blame you.
Donovan Mitchell, when he hit the three to push it to either 20 or 21, I was like, man, I just wasn't having a good time, obviously. And, I knew we were going to do this pod. I'm like thinking, like, man, all these troubles we had. Basically, every worry I had about this matchup happened in those first three quarters, right? We had trouble containing the ball, whether it was Harden in the pick and roll or it was Donovan Mitchell, just attacking the rim and, doing what he does best. And we had trouble, our starting lineup stopping that double big configuration that they run, which has been a struggle for the past 2 years, playing this team, especially when it comes to, Josh Hart being on the floor. Um, they just don't guard him. And when they don't guard him, Jared Allen could just roam around the rim and it makes it tough for everyone to get shots. They put a wing on Cat and he's kind of taken out of the equation. So it was looking really rough for the first three quarters. I was really wondering what Mike Brown was thinking because, like, coming into the series, you got to know what they're going to do, right? They've been doing this, they did this in the regular season as well, and which is why, we got blown out by them once. And then on Christmas Day, which was very reminiscent of this game, we were getting blown out the first three quarters, and then the fourth quarter, we had a big comeback. So that had me worried. And then in the fourth quarter, seemingly out of nowhere, everything just kind of switched. They took Hart off the floor. Cleveland got really stagnant. They stopped moving the ball. They stopped attacking the rim. They just started taking a bunch of threes. They took 50 threes last night.
Hmm.
They're not the Boston Celtics. That's
Yeah.
not the recipe, I think, to beat the Knicks if you're going to do that.
And a lot of like Evan Mobley threes that you
Yeah,
don't love.
Harden
And
step back threes, just like not,
Sam Merrill, I get he's a great shooter, but I don't really want him taking the last shot of regulation.
to be fair, it rimmed out.
It rimmed out.
Like
I mean, but I
Mike
just
Breen
didn't.
almost said bang.
Yes, he did, which we have never seen before. And credit to him because, I've accused Mike Breen of being a massive favorite, showing massive favoritism to the Knicks in his
He
past.
sounded a
If
little
people,
down in the beginning
people,
of that fourth
people,
quarter.
people, I saw some tweet. I couldn't tell you who it was, but said like, "Oh, shout out to Mike Breen. He really hides his Nick favoritism." And I'm
Yeah,
like,
I saw that.
"Excuse me?
I saw that tweet.
Game 7 a few years ago versus Indiana is one of
Oh,
the
it
most
was like
it
a
is one of the worst broadcasted games I have ever seen by someone who is as iconic and as great as Mike Breen is. It just was.
You would think he
But
was at a funeral, the way he
exactly.
was talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But obviously, yesterday I'm gonna give him credit. He almost said bang to Sam. I was honestly, if he made that shot, I was expecting him to say puts it in or something, and then he would have never came back from that. But just to go, let's talk about the biggest thing I took away from yesterday. Kenny Atkinson. Because Kenny Atkinson, I think I have a unique kind of point of view into this because I am a Brooklyn Nets fan. And so I watched Kenny Atkinson for years. And I also watched the media react to his firing. And what I think got lost in the sauce, sometimes when we really defend coaches' firings, like, oh, why did a coach get fired? We just sugarcoat so much and we miss so much when analyzing that. And another example of that is Darvin Ham. I'm not comparing Kenny Atkinson to Darvin Ham. I'm just saying
They looked alike last night.
when Darvin Ham was fired, there was this like national reaction, like, ah, he was the Lakers just they're nobody can coach them, and all of a sudden JJ
Right.
Redick gets there, and then all of a sudden they look a lot better, right? So with Kenny though, was doing a really good job with the Nets. What people didn't understand because that year they didn't have Kyrie for most of that season, they didn't have Katie, so a lot of people just quite frankly probably weren't paying attention. The Nets blew a ton of games that season and they blew it a lot of games before they went on before they made the playoffs the year prior with D'Angelo Russell. They started the year off 8-18, but before their big winning streak, they had a massive blown loss to the Sixers, I think, and they had another massive you know game where they just blew a massive lead. I think it was Oklahoma City. So they blew both those games, and Jimmy Butler and Paul George had like very much the same game-winning shots, but they were up like 20 plus in those games. Kenny Atkinson, when his teams go up 20, you could tell the game plan is great, right? Like for 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters, you could tell like that's all him, like his rotations, the way they're playing defense, the way they're connected, the way they're playing offensively, all through him. Then all of a sudden, in the final 6 minutes, it becomes a lot of one-on-one, stagnant play, bad shot selection, step back threes, and no timeouts being called. I don't know why Kenny does this. I don't know why, but it's something that I notice in Brooklyn. Now, I put it away for a bit because it's like, all right, maybe, he just didn't have the talent in Brooklyn as he does in like Cleveland, for example. And obviously, like they won 60 games last year. They lost in the second round last year, but that was a red hot Pacer team. They didn't have Garland, right? So like that there was a lot of things you could have pointed to in that series why they didn't work, why it didn't work. And then this year they don't look as great. They get hardened, but then I'm watching that game. They're up by 20, and as soon as they got it to 15 and he's still not calling a timeout, I'm like, oh boy, this game is definitely not over because Kenny Atkinson has blown leads like this in the past, but nobody talked about it. And Katie and Kyrie took a lot of the heat for getting him fired. And now we look years down the line. Stephen A. Smith said it on First Take this morning, and I was proud that he pointed it out because Katie and Kyrie got a lot of hate for that. It's only fair that we acknowledge that they might have been right
Mm.
because Kenny has these stubborn moments here where he's like, I like to keep my timeouts. He said it in the press conference yesterday, right? I like to keep my timeouts. What are you keeping them for? What are you keeping up for? You're up 20, game one, Eastern Conference Finals on the road in one of the most hostile crowds in sports. It's unacceptable. It was, you're smiling because you're obviously, you root for the team that won,
Right,
but like,
right,
so
yeah.
you're happy he did these things, but it's abominable coaching by Kenny Atkinson. And to the point where if I was running the team, I would, if I'm not going to fire him after, because they're not winning the series. If they're not going to fire him, I'm sitting down with him and be like, use your bleeping timeouts because that is why we have lost this series. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, after you see Brunson, he was just attacking Harden relentlessly. And Mike Brown said this, that they said, we're just gonna attack Harden. And he scored like 3, 4 times in a row. and then in the Garden, which was dead, silent in there when they were down
Kind of
20.
sounded like Barclays a little bit, as some Knicks fans would say.
And then, you know, quickly the energy started to come back up, and you could tell this game's not over. And he just sat there and watched 18 to
S-
1 run,
lot of smiles and a lot of
like
like that
before he
kind of
called the timeout.
thing.
And
Yeah.
like by that point, it was, I think, a 6 point game when he finally called timeout. That's too late
Hmm.
because everyone started. Shamit started hitting some shots. OG started to, get his feet under him again. He looked very off the first 3 quarters, a little worrisome because I don't know how healthy he is, but looked much better in the OT. But you just can't sit and watch your team going an 18 to 1. The other team going an 18 to 1 run.
And not only does he not call the timeouts, every Cleveland Cavalier is taking a shot, but Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
How does he not at least yell, "Guys, get it to Donovan Mitchell once, please"? Can we get in some sort of action where Mitchell is getting the ball? You don't really need a timeout to say that. You could just say, "Hey, James, let's run something for Donovan here. Let's do something." I mean, maybe I'm oversimplifying it. I don't think I am. Okay. Like, run something for your best player, please. Part of the reason why I was for the Harden deal for Cleveland is because A, he plays. B, I said they're kind of constructed in a way where they can win despite his playoff shortcomings. In fact, we've seen that, right?
Yeah.
He has had brutal playoff games. Now he's had some good ones, but he's had brutal playoff games, and they've still been able to win. Why? Because Donovan Mitchell is usually the guy they go to at the end of the games. And even though Harden obviously shares a lot of ball handling duties, as far as scoring and attacking, it's Mitchell. And then they obviously have enough shooting to where Harden can navigate and obviously organize. The two bigs have played really well in this postseason. Mobley and Allen have looked better. I thought they looked great yesterday until obviously the very end, which would have been a fascinating, narrative because of obviously how exposed they were a few years ago. It was very interesting to see that that was not the case yesterday until the very end.
Yeah.
I can't believe Cleveland lost this game the way they did. I just am like, I've never seen that where someone is just staring and watching this happen. It felt like, the Pistons Orlando Magic game where they blew a 22-point lead. As brutal as that was, you could tell, like, you know what? Orlando's had this issue in the past. They just can't put the ball in the basket.
Yeah.
Like, they just can't score because they're incapable of scoring the basketball. I'm not taking all the blame away from Mosley, but the reality is like these guys aren't great offensive players. Cleveland does not have that issue, and yet this happened.
Yeah. I mean, a 44 to 11 run from the 7 minute mark in the fourth to overtime.
Hmm.
Largest fourth quarter comeback in
It's
13
almost
years.
impossible.
It's the largest playoff comeback for the Knicks since 1970.
Yeah.
Like this was an incredible outlier type of comeback for it to happen so quickly. And then even in the overtime, Harden hit the basket that put them up two, and then Brunson hit one to force OT. They didn't score again until the minute 45 mark.
You knew it was over. Once Merrill misses the three, it's you knew officially at that point it was over. I mean, I didn't even think Cleveland was going to execute either because I didn't really like where that possession was going. It felt like even though Merrill got a good look and he rimmed out, it just felt like that wasn't really what they wanted to do.
I mean, do you want Sam Merrill taking the last shot of the game? I
Yeah.
mean, and
It just
it wasn't
felt
like he was super hot. Like
yeah.
he hit like two or three on the night, but
Yeah.
just
It all felt so reactionary. Just like, oh, Mitchell's doubled, so I'm gonna get it to Merrill. He's open, and he's gonna knock down a shot, hopefully. Let's pray.
and it's so eerily similar. We were in this position last
Hmm.
year.
Hmm.
We had a lead in the fourth quarter
Yeah.
against the Pacers. And then Aaron Naismith goes off, hits a bunch of threes, and you just quickly feel it unraveling. And
Yeah.
you could tell after the Halliburton shot went in, like you could see it on the Knicks' faces. we just what's happening to us? Like you could see like the shell shock
Yeah.
on their faces, and it looked very similar to the Cavs. Like them
Yeah.
walking back to the bench, them sitting on the bench, like what's happening? And it just the roof came falling down on them, and they had no answer for it.
And but the defense for the Knicks there is that some of those shots Neesmith was making
Right.
were absurd.
But you could
Like,
say that for Brunson. I mean, the high
well,
off the
well,
glass, some of those shots
but
are really
yeah,
tough.
but like sometimes Brunson, like, yes, some shots, sure, but like,
We've seen him do
like
stuff like that before, so it's like
it,
it's not as
it,
crazy.
it was so much more that like there were so many like there was like a million more things Cleveland could have done to have stopped that. And maybe last year for the Knicks, it was like maybe there was like 100 different things. You know what I mean? Like it was like it just felt like when you're up 22
Right.
and it's like I don't know, maybe make sure Harden doesn't get caught in the switch with Brunson. Maybe scheme or do something, call a timeout. He
Consider,
left them out on an island, and I'm
yeah.
not defending Harden. He's obviously not a great defender. And he, he it's only fitting James Harden is a part of a team that did that in game one of the Eastern Conference Finals. It's only fitting. But I 100% put this on Kenny. It's just a brutal it's one of the worst coaching performances I have seen in a playoff game, which is so crazy because his game plan was obviously working so well.
Mhm. Yeah.
That is not the issue. But you know what that is, man? That's like an assistant coach right there. That's an assistant
Mhm.
guy who schemes, comes up with the game plan, helps the head coach, but then you need the guy that's going to help actually execute at the end of games. And that doesn't seem like what Kenny can do. Because Kenny obviously he was an assistant with Golden State. He had a history of being an assistant before Brooklyn, very successful assistant. Every coach loved him. And it's probably because of how he develops talent and gets them to scheme well and play well for most of the game. But when it comes down to the end of the game, Kenny is not closing the deal.
Mhm.
And this was the example that was finally exposed on the biggest stage. It could not happen for Cleveland, and it did.
So, do you think they're done? Like, do you think
100%
they
done.
can get up and come back
Nope.
up?
They'll have to prove me wrong. They'll have to prove they'll have to prove, like listen, they've come back from 2-0 versus Detroit, but those games are in Detroit, right? I'm sorry. Yeah, obviously these games are going to be with the Knicks as well. What I mean by that saying is like they didn't lose those games like this, you know? It was very much like they had this. And
Yeah.
whenever I see this, and I tried to convince myself with the Yankees a few years ago, whereas the Dodgers, when they lost game one that way, when Freddie Freeman hit the walk-off, like you're like, okay, all right, game two, different pitcher. No, you don't really recover from it.
Mhm.
A heart-breaking, crushing loss like that, it's really hard to come back from that. It's really hard. And especially I feel like in basketball, because at least in baseball you could be like, well, it's a different pitcher, it's a different this and whatever.
Right.
In basketball, it's like it's such a team sport, and yeah, I feel like momentum is means so much. So I am just floored that they lost this game that way. Then the Knicks got to play better than what they did.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I don't want to sweep that under the rug, but you know what, man? Like, I Brunson really wasn't doing much until that run into the fourth quarter. Like, he was
Yeah.
not really doing anything.
He started the game pretty well. I think he had like
Yeah.
10 in the first quarter. And
Hmm.
then found a way to just kind of keep him from they kind of shut down all the cat, point forward, point center stuff, which I
Yeah.
thought was a good adjustment that they made. They've only had 2 days, a day really to prepare for the Knicks.
Hmm.
And they did a good job with that, with their lineup is kind of suited to kind of shut it off. And we'll see going forward how Mike Brown adjusts for that because I don't think they want to really go away from that. I think it worked so well up to
Yeah.
this point.
Hmm.
And it keeps Brunson fresh for more of the game. And you don't want him pounding the ball all game and bringing the ball up. Um, so we'll see how they adjust that. They obviously didn't shoot well. Neither team really did. Um, at least compared to how the Knicks have been shooting against Philly. So we'll see if that, comes back to more of a regular area. I mentioned OG. I think he's going to eventually look a little better if he trusts the hamstring. Bridges, obviously, he's been great. We've talked about him. Um, and, the guys off the bench, Shamit, Alvarado, Deuce. I know he went scoreless last night, but he's always going to be a defensive presence. And same thing with Mitch. Uh, it's going to be interesting to see if Cleveland can replicate what they did in the first three quarters because it
Hmm.
was working perfectly, and the Knicks really didn't seem to have any answers. It's wishful thinking. I think Hart needs to play less in this series. He was a
Yeah, Hart.
minus,
That's another just narrative. It's just like that's not being talked about now because the Knicks won. His Hart provided basically nothing.
yeah, he was a minus 23, and he scores and he brings some effort. But the Knicks with him off the court were a plus 34, 154 offensive rating. It's just in this particular matchup, it just doesn't work with him out there because they don't guard him. And if he's not
Oh,
going
oh,
to
but don't worry, he'll make sure to talk a lot of crap,
be.
and we'll keep hearing about Josh Hart. Um, I just want to give a shout out to because this is very important, I think, for what I've said in the past. I'm on the record that I believe that the Knicks massively overpaid for Mikal Bridges,
Mhm.
right? When I said my reaction initially on that trade was, I think this is amazing for the Nets. I still think it's amazing for the Nets. That has not changed, just because the Knicks are in the position that they're in. Um, However, I also said that the deal is probably worth it, even though it didn't make sense for me at the time. And honestly, I still think it doesn't make the most sense to me. I'm not just gonna, just change my opinion just because the Knicks are in the position where they were completely. But I did say at the time that it is worth it for them if they make a finals appearance, because at least they can fall back on, hey, we made the finals, we were stuck in mediocrity for years, we were dysfunctional for years, and we made the finals after we made this trade. They could fall back on that. And if depending on the matchup they get, if they get San Antonio, they're going to have a real shot at winning that series, it looks like. And maybe, maybe they can chuck the Thunder. But the point being is if the Knicks make the finals, the Bridges deal is worth it for them. And especially considering that he has miraculously, in the last few weeks, dug himself out of whatever struggles he was having. And this is crazy to me because last year, obviously, we know he had the big steals, he had the nice scoring fourth quarter, but it just felt like it was piled on um, after all like his teammates were doing the work. They significantly needed him in the game yesterday, and he came through. And you know, this year was another shaky season for him in the regular season, inconsistent. Last year was the same deal. And, a Nick fan acting like a few weeks ago they didn't want him gone when he scored 0 points in,
In
what was
the
it, game
Atlantic,
two or game
yeah,
three, I think it was.
in
Game three,
Atlanta,
when they
yeah.
went down 2-1, he scored 0 points. And any Nick fan acting like they felt great about the Mikal Bridges trade at that point is lying. I don't care what anybody says. But credit to him, he has miraculously pulled this out. And now the Knicks are a favorite to go to the NBA Finals. And if that's the case, the deal's worth it for them. It just is. Because especially when you take into account how he is participating and how he's performing. Will they win a championship because of that trade? That's a different question.
Yeah, we'll see.
So, yeah, Knicks in five. I had Knicks in six before the series. Knicks
I
in
I
five.
had, I had Knicks in six.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just keep with it, because they have a lot of talent. I think if they do keep it together somewhat,
Yeah.
they could pull out, especially in Cleveland where they've been great this year.
See, like, you know what? Here's the thing too. It's not like Cleveland blew a 10-point lead or something. Like if they blew a 10-point lead, all right, narrow, when a Knicks made a comeback, cool. Come back game two, maybe get the win.
22-point lead.
22-point lead. Was it the bigger they are, the harder they fall. The bigger the lead, the
Yeah.
harder it is to come back from losing a deficit like that. So yeah, that's enough of that series, which is so disappointing because if Cleveland had won, then it becomes a vastly more interesting series.
Right.
And yeah, but yeah, let's talk about Spurs Thunder because obviously Wemby had a generational performance. It's,
Unbelievable.
unbelievable. And the fact that he's in year three doing this and this is their first year in the playoffs and they didn't have Fox and Dylan
Right.
Harper comes in and he's awesome. You know, I didn't know where to go with this series, but I think I'm taking the Spurs, man. I think the Spurs are going to beat the Thunder. I really do. Even if they lose tonight, I just think San Antonio has something on them. I'm watching them. I think they've grown and matured. They've impressed me throughout the playoffs. They don't look like that two seed that like overachieved. There's that Western Conference two seed that always like kind of overachieves and it's usually some young team that tries hard every day. And San Antonio fit the bill for that team, it looked like. But then all of a sudden, like you watch them in the playoffs, how do they handle the Wemby concussion news?
Mm.
How they played in the second round, and now obviously in this round after they handled Minnesota handily, it looked like, and Minnesota beat Denver easily. We thought Denver was a
Right.
contender. So they should have beaten Minnesota in five if Wemby doesn't get ejected. So we're heading into this conference finals. I just think San Antonio's here, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Before this, I was thinking like Spurs in seven before the series. Um,
They'd have to win a game seven on the road though, so that's
that
why I
would be
had them
that
in
would be tough.
six.
That
Yeah,
would be tough. Um, but they just won this game in Oklahoma City. I mean,
I know, but double overtime. Shea was bad, and
yeah, yeah. Shea really struggled with the constant, ball pressure that they were sending at him, and they are built to do that. They have a lot of, Stefan Castle, Harper, um, Champagny. They got a lot of guys that can throw him Vassell.
shout out Champagny, man. He was at St. John's when we were there.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, proud of him, man. He's really come up from the player he was at St. John's.
I can't believe he's like starting on a contending
On a
team.
contender.
He
Yeah.
went from undrafted. We saw him play at St. John's. We liked him. I liked him. I thought he
Yeah.
was a pro, and I actually got to interview him, and it was really cool. And he just like seemed like a really good dude. Came from the Mike Anderson cloth, which is crazy. Like it wasn't even the
Right.
Patino thing. Like you look
Right.
at Danish Jenkins and like Zuby, I think is going to be a good NBA player. Like they come from that Patino cloth. That's not Champagny. Champagny goes to the Spurs, and I'm like, oh, that's perfect. That's a great organization to get him out. And what I think he has like the franchise record for most threes made in a game.
Yeah, it was against the Knicks.
Yeah, it was against Knicks.
It's the
So
one game they beat us this year.
so there you
He
go.
had 11
So
threes.
so Champagny, shout out to him. He's important for them. And San Antonio, I just like, continue what you were saying, but like I
Yeah.
just like them a lot in this series.
Yeah, and I think these Thunder are still very good, but the main difference is it's Victor Wembanyama. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to be able to continue to replicate exactly what he did the other night. I mean, 41 points, 24 rebounds, with three blocks and a steal. And we both texted each other at almost the exact same time when he hit that shot. Because it was just an insane shot, very reminiscent of the Steph
Ridiculous.
Curry shot that
Yeah.
he hit back in 2016. Almost
Only
like,
he's 7'5".
yeah, almost to the spot. Like right where, and it just came out of nowhere. Like I think he only took two threes on the night, and that was one of them. That was the one he made from like 30 feet out to force double overtime.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unreal performance. Like you could feel it watching it. Like this is a moment that we're gonna remember, especially if they win this series and they go on to the finals. Like Wembanyama establishing himself as maybe the best player in the NBA.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The Spurs are, they're an example of a team that, that really follows what Adam Silver's been saying for years, and the media, they don't really tank. And oh, wait, no, they did. They
I love
tanked and got
this.
extremely
I
lucky
love
to
this.
get three franchise guys that last them for decades. That's what
No,
they
it's
did.
just
And
it's just
and just
scouting.
sprinkle in Dylan
It's
Harper there. You have De'Aaron Fox. We're just gonna
uh,
give you Dylan Harper
they're
and
they're just they're great. They're smarter than everyone else. They have
yeah,
great
they're smarter
scouting.
than everybody. That they just the scouting. I mean, it was really impressive that they picked Dylan Harper at number two or Victor Wembanyama at one. Crazy.
I'm
After
gonna
after
I'm gonna
being mediocre for like 5 years.
right.
I'll
I
give
get
him, listen, I'll give him credit for Castle because
right,
that
yeah,
was a weak draft. He didn't go number one. He clearly
mhm,
should have. And, the third pick in that draft was Reed Shepherd.
right. And Zachary
You know,
Richardson was out of the Atlanta
it's
Hawks rotation.
unplayable.
Yeah,
Yeah. So shout out to them. And I knew Castle was going to be good too. I like Castle a lot. So
yeah.
yeah, man.
So
I listen, but let's not forget, like the Thunder, like they could totally still win the series. I'm
100%,
just like I'm going
100%.
with San Antonio just because of like I just like what I have seen from how they play against them, and it looks like the regular season has transitioned into the postseason, and I think the biggest reason for that is just because Wemby's 7'4", and he's just that good. You know what I mean?
It's just such a problem.
I'm curious to see if the Knicks regular season transition comes over to the finals, say if they play the Spurs. Like if you tell me Jalen Brunson versus Wemby, like if like obviously basketball's more complicated than that, but I'm
Right.
probably gonna take Wemby, even
Yeah,
though
it'd
the
be
Knicks
tough.
beat the Spurs in the regular season.
And the Spurs have been so good, especially over the past like 2 months of the regular season. I think they'd lost like two or three times, and they've
Yeah.
just kind of carried it over into the playoffs. Even with the little, they blew that lead against Portland. They've had their little adversity moments. The concussion you mentioned with
Mm.
Wemby, and he got ejected for that other game from the for the elbow. And I think Minnesota, even though they kind of it was you could tell they were the better team, and they Minnesota did provide some challenges, and going up against Gobert, who just had a great series against Jokic. I thought Minnesota was a great test for them. Minnesota's been a tough team. They're kind of in a weird spot now. We'll see what they do in the offseason. Um, but I thought that was a great test to kind of prepare them for, give them some adversity, kind of similar to what the Thunder kind of went through last year because they were in that spot, the similar position the Spurs are now, where they're
Hmm.
this young team that won a bunch of games, didn't expect them to win this many games, but
Yeah.
they had those tough series and it kind of kept them, didn't that experience, that everyone kind of harps on doesn't really show that much.
Hmm. Yeah. I've always thought experience was so overrated. There's so many things that we think about going into playoff series that I think are vastly overrated. One of them is rest. One of them is, oh, they're gassed from the previous series. I think those are vastly overrated. And I think playoff experience is overrated. I've seen tons of old teams that are like, oh, we're waiting for the playoffs, and then they flop. I've seen tons of, including mine. I back with Paul Pierce and KG. I've seen that playoff experience may get you a couple games in a series. Like you may like if you're playing a young team in a series that you may push that young team to like 6 games or something, but you'll probably lose still. And then like Golden State, we've always like, oh, playoff experience, playoff experience.
Right.
Oh, the play-in, they're gonna definitely because of the playoff experience. And
Right.
then
Yeah.
they don't do it. They don't do it. So I think youth is especially like the talent San Antonio has is just off the charts in regards to a franchise guy. And they obviously had Popovich just whispering a couple things,
Right. Of course.
which I think
That's always important.
matters. I don't think that's nothing.
Definitely not. I mean, come on. Like
I mean, if
Greg
he was,
Popovich.
if Kenny Atkinson was the coach of the Spurs, I mean, Popovich would be like, hey, call a timeout, Kenny, call a timeout.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
Popovich might have like ran onto the floor and been like, Kenny, call time.
It's like how you just it's so crazy.
Yeah.
But
So I think they're gonna split. I think the Thunder probably win game two. Um, Not probably. It wouldn't shock me if they lost, but like I think I'm going with the Thunder in game two. I think they split in San Antonio, and I think San Antonio wins the final 2 games.
OKC has to figure out how they're gonna guard Wemby because obviously what they did in game one did not work. Like you can't have J Dub and Caruso and Dort. You got to put Chet on him. And obviously
Yeah.
there's this beef. I don't know if it looks one-sided. I don't know if Chet really has beef with Wemby, but
Mm.
Chet's got to be better.
I mean,
And then
Chet had the big block on him in regulation
that's
too.
true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And
I would like to
and
see it.
maybe their rationale is you want Chet kind of in that help spot so he can block shots and
Yep.
rebound, but you got to put some sort of resistance on Wemby. Maybe we'll see if they start throwing some doubles, force other guys
Hmm.
to make shots. I don't know. I haven't checked if Fox is going to play tonight or not.
I haven't checked either, but they
We'll
need him.
see if he
It might
does.
be
If
game
if he
time.
doesn't, I mean Dylan Harper. I knew he was
Clearly,
going
it
to be the
doesn't
go.
matter.
Yeah,
Clearly, it doesn't matter. Well, it's been an exciting playoffs. I'm excited to watch one of these series because I think the other one's already in doubt. But I congratulations.
I mean,
This is a
those were
fun run,
we
Dan.
got two. I mean, it ended up being two fantastic game ones. Game
Yeah.
one last night wasn't great until the end, but then game one was one of the best playoff games we've probably had in the past 5, 10 years. Hopefully that continues in this series. We'll see tonight. Really excited to watch these games and see how far my team can go.